the state of Texas has passed the most restrictive law on abortion, or should I say reproductive rights, since the court overturned Roe v. Wade in 1973. So, ladies, what is your take on this ruling? We'll start with you, Glenn.
I'm trying to figure out where should I unpack this from. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little disturbed. It's disturbing, to put that to say, hey, you cannot abort the baby, and you have to keep it, and all that stuff. It's like, wow, why don't that person have the rights to make a decision on what they want? You don't know how that could have happened. There's a lot of people who, come in that circumstances because they get raped, what I'm saying, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, so you're trying to tell me I can't make a decision to, abort if I don't want to, or I can say, hey, this might not be the right timing for me, or whatever the circumstance is that you're telling me I don't have no decision, I don't have no right as a woman to make that for myself. That's not cool. It's like, what are we back in the 1800s? This is 2021. Why are we still trying to control a woman? And I'm pretty sure it was a decision probably made by a whole bunch of men. What woman sat on that board or made that decision? I'm pretty sure none was there.
Well, you might be surprised on that because, this comes from right-wing Republicans, some of which are women who are supporting this law wholeheartedly. But Stefania, what's your take? Because I know you just went to the march.
Yeah, so to me, to be honest, the fact that it's even come up, and granted, I'm sure it's been discussed previously through the years, ever since ever since the law went into effect in '73. To me, it's about right now controlling a narrative from a conservative party that wants control of women. They want.
You think it's only women?
No, so, well, for this,
Right.
for this it is.
Well,
but there's other things, obviously, that are definitely taking place. But
see, because right now there are so many issues. It's really all one issue under one umbrella, and it's the issue of rights.
Yeah.
Right now, like you said, the 18th century. Well, here we are in the 21st century, and the Voting Rights Act, which we fought so hard for, is in doubt.
And we're still fighting.
We're still fighting.
Which
Right?
sad.
Again,
A war that we thought was won in the 60s. Here we are again. For women, Roe v. Wade, 1973, thought the case was settled. Right? That right is rock solid. And now we're dealing with a case where we may lose the right to vote. Women and reproductive rights are in jeopardy.
Absolutely.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
If you think about it, prior to 9/11, America was a different place. Since that time, we're the most surveilled people on the planet. Our government can't keep track of the Taliban, but they know where we are all the time. So our rights are in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So this is something that I think we have to fight on many fronts.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But, for a lot of men, they look at this as being a woman's issue. You think it's only a woman's issue?
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. I actually put something recently on my Facebook, will probably disturb a lot of people, but I don't care because I'm going to talk about the truth. So I said, when a man lays down on a woman, it's not just the woman's responsibility to protect herself. It's also his responsibility as well. If she gets pregnant, it's his responsibility and it's her responsibility. Because I see too many people say, well, it's the woman. And it was like, no, it's his too. You decided to lay down with her. I don't care if she was just, a jump off. Or that's really your significant other, or that's the one that you've been on for a while. It doesn't matter. You know the chances of what happened when you lay down with someone unprotected. And yes, some circumstances you can be, but there's no 100% chance that person's not if you're very active. That's the thing that's kind of disturbing. It was like, you know what you get into once you cross that line.
So I agree, because obviously it takes two to tango. We know that, right?
Absolutely.
I think I know back when, Roe versus Wade, and then we talked about sex education in schools, and they started implementing that to avoid teen pregnancies, right? Because then teen pregnancies became the big thing or theme. It is both issues because it takes two, but the way I see it as well, it is a woman who should have the right to decide on her body. Now, granted, I know some people say, well, if they're married and the husband doesn't want her to get an abortion and she wants to, or what if there's a relationship there, or what have you. Those are difficult discussions to have. Those are difficult scenarios to be in. But at the end of the day, it still is my body, my choice. And, you know, it's funny because that's exactly what was resonating in my head, even at the march. You know, people were saying, my body, my choice.
Mm-hmm.
They don't go after men and say, you know, snip, snip, so that you don't get a woman pregnant, you know, as a contraceptive until you're ready to actually, you know, have a woman bear your child. So why is it that the control is over the woman and her reproductive organs for you to decide on what needs to be done on her body?
Question for you. Wasn't there at one point there was kind of like a law that if a woman did get pregnant, she was married, that she had to have the husband consent? There was something like that going on, right?
I don't know
Like
when,
the 70s,
but I recall.
80s.
I recall.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, because again, they're a unit, right? And the control was not, the women didn't have control of anything, right?
Right.
But you know, here we are, new age, we think. We think.
Right.
Things have changed and they still remain the same. It's just a different face, a different, you know, it's just a different way to look at it.
I think that the time we're in now is probably unlike any other time in America. You know, for Black people who fought for civil rights, for voting rights, for human rights, it was clear who the enemy was. It was the Dixiecrats. It was the system, the oppressive system. Today, it's not so clear.
No.
Because this country, although it was divided, it's always been divided, is more so now than ever before. You have red states and blue states. You have people who are pro-life, pro-choice. You have people who are, I guess the word would be family values, who don't agree with the LGBTQ lifestyle. So all of these issues now, we have to confront them. Some of these people might agree with you on one issue,
but not on another.
So, you know, if you think about it, the Civil War was fought primarily over one issue. And now we have multiple issues that we don't agree on. This issue in Texas being a huge one.
Right.
You know, like right now, most people are talking about two things: the ongoing pandemic, and then you have this law in Texas.
And voting rights.
Yeah.
That too.
Voting rights,
Again,
which
it's
all
all under
comes
the same
together.
umbrella because it's
politics.
Right. It's right. And the loss of those rights.
Correct.
Now, for, I guess unfortunately for us, after 9/11, we surrendered some of those rights because we were told it's necessary to protect us from terrorism. So we didn't say anything when they said, well, you got to strip naked to go through an airport. We didn't say anything when the government rolled out the Patriot Act and said, we can kick open your doors without a warrant.
That's crazy.
Right. All of that came about as a result of 9/11.
Correct.
The problem is once the government takes your rights, they do not restore them. So for women in this country, for people in general in this country that want to hold on to the rights that we have, it's important that we be active.
Right.
So it was a good thing that women are mobilizing. And it should be everybody mobilizing.
Absolutely.
Attending these marches, speaking out, challenging the government, because the government says we are the power in this country. Unfortunately, we kind of advocated it to these people in Washington who really don't have a clue. Why, with so much going on in the world, are we revisiting now the rights issue? The reproductive rights issue?
It's
you
crazy.
Know, we just came out of a 20-year war that we apparently lost, by the way. We left billions of dollars in military hardware behind for the enemy. And we're talking about rights.
Yeah, what are we talking about?
Right. We've come so far only to go so far back. So, you know, in this case, down in Texas, if it's successful in Texas, if the Supreme Court does not overturn this law, we're going to see this law in other states.
In other states,
It's
they're
gonna
already
happen.
working.
But let me tell you, it's going to be a fight because just going back to picking off what you said time. And I think right now it is the perfect time. And you know why? Because the millennials, they're a different type of breeze. Like, you know, they wasn't like grandpa and grandpa, you know, yes, man, whatever, yes, ma'am, and just stick by it. No, they're voicing their opinions. They're very loud and they're strong and they're fun. So I think, you know, it's a battle between it's always like this, the old school versus the new school. And the new school was saying, no, we're not accepting it. So they're out there, they're fighting, even on social media, you know, because that's the platform that they usually go to. They go through social media. So you see a lot of that. And it's like, I think it's great, but we have to get them to shift from going from social media to actually showing up in person, you know, so they can speak up exactly and etc.
Right.
But I think this is the perfect time for us to fight this battle because, like I said, the millennials they're not backing down.
Well, it's always been young folks who were who was at the forefront of every uprising.
Right.
Older people are in a position where, okay, I fought the battle now.
Right.
And the torch is passed to the next generation.
Absolutely.
But in this case, the problem is that this new generation doesn't understand a lot about freedom. See, a lot of them were born after 9/11, right? So all they know is going through an airport naked, right? They don't know prior to, there was no TSA.
Right.
There was just a security guard who wanted you and you went on through. They don't know about not walking into a city and being surveilled and facial recognition software. They don't know anything about that. This is the world that they're inheriting. So to them, are they sufficiently angry yet?
To a certain point.
I think it depends on the issue.
Right.
I feel that there are certain issues like this, for instance, and it's funny you said how, you know, the older generation, they're tired, they passed on the torch. When I was at the march, there were some women there who were at the march in 2017. They were fighting for women's rights back in the, you know, they were a part of the process through the years. And actually one woman said to me, please, let's get this nipped and sealed. She goes, because I am getting too old for this. This is ridiculous. Like the fact that we're coming back and having this discussion. But again, from a new generation perspective, I agree with you you know, when you're used to something, you don't know any different, right? So you just go with the flow because that's what it is. There are freedoms, but there's also things that they didn't know that you're not really free per se because of things that had to be put in place. And you go to when we talk about 9/11. Now, for me, I feel there's certain things that needed to be implemented to keep us safe, but did we go overboard?
And that's always the issue.
Can I chime in real quick?
Sure.
I said that you made me think about Miss Ida B. Wells, and it's so crazy because she, you know, I call her like the mother of like the march because she was the one who was saying, hey, you know, for women, I'm all for women. So it's like she was born back in the late 1800s, I believe. And it's like, wow. And here we are today in 2021, and we're still fighting. And there was another young lady, I can't think of her name. She was also powerful too. But at one time too, she fought with Dr. Thurgood Marshall in a court, and she made a point in saying that, you know, women were not even in the I think the 15th Amendment. Like we wasn't even in the amendment, and it was like, wow, look at that. So when she heightened that, it just took it to a whole new level. That it's like, this is a man's world.
Well, you know something? I wouldn't say a man's world. What men? Right? Some men are powerless. And for women in this country, going back, you don't have to go that far back. In the 70s, early 70s, a woman could not open a bank account unless she was married and had her husband's permission. Could not have a credit card. Right? In this country, the problem is balance. You know, you want a scale to be balanced, not too heavy, not too light.
Right.
Well, in this country, we've always been off balance. You know, I can remember as a kid watching a show called Father Knows Best. Right? Everything was about the male.
Right.
Everything was patriarchal. Father knew best.
Right.
The woman stayed at home, had her little apron on when he came home. Oh, honey, hi, dinner's ready.
Right.
Well, over time, things have shifted.
Yes,
absolutely.
Right. And one of the problems I think that men have had a loss of power.
You think? Really?
It is a perception. Now, I was a police officer, right? I retired after 20 years. So right now, if you were to call the police and say you feel threatened by your husband, he doesn't have to hit you. If you feel threatened in that house, he has to leave. It's his home. He hasn't physically aggressed you in any way, but just your perception will lead to him being asked to leave that house, possibly arrested. And for a police officer in 2020 or 2021, you don't have the option to say, well, look, I just go take a walk around the corner and cool off and come back.
Right. They used to say that back in the day, though.
They did.
I was about to say, because I remember that being the case.
That changed after O.J. Simpson, after that verdict.
Domestic violence, you know,
That's when it began to change. After the O.J. verdict.
Yeah.
The laws became more stringent.
Right.
And the discretion was taken away from the rank and file police officer. And you're told you must arrest in a situation like that. So for a lot of men, right, the perception is a loss of power. And in many ways it is. It's a loss of economic power. You know, my father was able to, with one paycheck, was able to buy a house and maintain a family of 5. That man today cannot do that.
Sure enough can.
It's just a different economic reality nowadays, right? So there's just that perception that the power that I once had, if you think about it, a lot of men my age were born in the 60s, right? For men in the 60s and men today, there's a major difference.
And you said economic violence, so I'm just going to piggyback a little bit. You know, like you said, the man took care of everything. Now in this day and age, so many women have their own business, and some of them are they're CEOs, and they're in a lot of leadership positions. So it's like, because we have that economic part down, it's like, you know, it's like not to go, you know, throw shade. It's like, I don't need you financially. I'm great by myself, because I think back then that was the control. You need me financially. So now that you don't need me financially, right? It's like it's a
power shift.
Right.
So it sounds like money is power, right?
Right.
So let's talk about it. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody's, you know, money is power at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I think that when you speak of, you know, again, from back in the day when dad, you know, the fathers pretty much took care of house and home, and the wife was at home cooking and tending to the children. Yes, things have changed. Women have started, when men went to war, women were actually in place doing jobs that men would have done. And they started feeling empowered and saying, we now should really come forward, because we should have a right to be able to go out into the workforce. We should have a right to be able to help our husbands manage households and our children and things of that. It's evolved, right? I mean, I think the perception of I'm losing power. I mean, some men are like, hell, you know, I don't have a problem with my wife kind of helping with households. You know, and I think that, you know, again, if a man is feeling that not having control of his household because he's not running the household independently, that perception, that is so old school mentality that we got to be coming out of that.
And see, that's why I said men of my generation and before, right? Men nowadays, there's a completely different, I guess, train of thought. You know, I was reading an article the other day about a man who, his wife, pregnant, had a child. I think she was home for like 2 years. She went back into the workforce. Now he's saying he wants to stop work and be a stay-at-home dad. See, men of my generation, I never saw stay-at-home dad. I don't know if that sort of thing existed. You know, men are socialized to be the one to go out and to do the hunting and the gathering. And if you do not do that,
do you feel less of a man?
About yourself.
Feel less of a man?
Right. When you look yourself in the mirror,
why?
Do you feel the same as you would if you had a job and you were contributing more to the family? Because you know something, let's be realistic. the male ego is sometimes fragile.
Of course.
So sometimes if your wife is making more money than you, it's like, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It depends
some
also on for some guys. You're
Right.
right. You're right. So yeah, we can't generalize everybody because you're right. It is. Some men might feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
Some men might be like, heck yeah, my wife's doing it, right? She's bringing in the money, and we're working together. This is where I think we miss the boat, even when it comes to relationships. And I know we're kind of segueing into these scenarios, but when it comes to a relationship, it takes two parties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think the power of a unified, whatever your relationships is, but let's just, for the sake of this discussion, man, woman, the power that has together, there could be so much more that people can do other than just maintaining a household.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Some of those families only were able to maintain a household,
right,
because it was one income coming in. Now you're able to travel the world and give things to your children that you may not have had,
mm-hmm.
And have opportunities that you might not have had previously. And I think that's where we need to come to a place to say, you know what, you shouldn't, and I get it, some men feel this way, you shouldn't have to feel that way, because two people together and who are powerful together, I call them the power couples,
Mm-hmm.
Making a living together. Who cares which one is making more money or whatever? As long as you're managing your household affairs and you decide on how you want to do that, because everybody has a different way of managing that. So what?
Well, you know something? The issue is that in Congress, there is a core group. Nowadays, in the last, I guess, maybe 20 years, you see more people that are called people of color, right?
Yeah.
And more women entering politics.
Absolutely.
But prior to that, who was in Washington? Who were the decision makers? White males over 50.
Absolutely.
Right.
And today, Congress, both houses are controlled by white males over 50.
Yeah.
You have Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
And okay, you have Nancy Pelosi. But Nancy Pelosi is in her 70s.
She need to retire.
Right.
But she doesn't.
She's in her 70s.
Yeah,
she's from a different, a bygone era.
Right.
So that's the sort of mentality that's driving this anti-abortion law.
Yeah.
Because their thing was they're used to having control.
Yeah.
They're used to dictating, not just to women, to everybody.
Right. But I'm sorry, a lot on women. I'm sorry. It is a lot on women. It was more of minimizing their control. But like you said, now speaking to Congress, there's a lot of women coming in. Like, I love Maxine Waters. I respect her so much. I respect the young lady. I can't think of her name, but she is now a representative she's from the Bronx, because I'm from the Bronx. So she's now, what's her name?
Alexandria
AOC?
Yeah.
I think she's a young girl. She's
Alexandria
like in her 30s or 20s.
Yeah,
right.
that's
So
AOC.
that right there, that was like a groundbreaker to see a Latino woman from the
That's her.
Bronx to come through.
That's
So
her.
she don't know what she did. She was a waitress. It's like,
bartender.
wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Look at she came just to make her way so she can get in that seat, and that paved the way. So hopefully that will give other young ladies insight. Well, if she can do it, I can do it too, because that's what it's all about. Seeing someone break that barrier. Once that barrier is broken, it's a wrap. And they fought her too.
They're still fighting her. But
They still fight her.
But the problem is this: even with the squad, which is AOC, the representative from Massachusetts, Pramila Jayapal, and a few others, represent this new movement in the Democratic Party.
It's minority still.
But the problem is the system itself is broken.
Right.
And because we have a broken system, we have our law or our rights being taken away from us systematically.
Right.
They're just chipping away.
Yep.
You know, when I talked about the umbrella, all of these are issues of rights.
Yes.
Right? So now you have the pandemic. And people are being told you have to take this vaccine. It's not a matter when you say my body, my right, my right to choose. Well, the government is basically saying no. In some instances, there are mandatory vaccinations if you're a federal employee.
There is. And what a lot of people don't know too, especially like in the state of New York, people are mad at their employers, but what they don't know is that their employer will get fined if you do not. So
it's mandatory.
Exactly. So it's mad. So it's you're mad at your employer and you don't have no control.
But again, that goes back to what I'm saying. It is a mandate.
Right.
Right?
But so I want to talk about that real quick because now that you brought that into the picture, because someone had made a comment about trying to make it's not apples and apples, women's rights, reproductive rights versus vaccination, mask wearing, whatever. So you're talking global pandemic that you can contract, right? A virus. It's been in place. I mean, it's happened, polio and all type of, right? We've been vaccinated in schools. You had to go to school, you had to get a vaccine, whatever.
Right.
So I want to delineate both because one is a health issue that you could get somebody else sick and pass on a virus versus my body. When I say my body, my right, this is my reproductive system that has nothing to do where if I get an abortion, it's not going to affect you. You're not going to get sick. This is me. So I just want, because I've had people do these comparisons and it drives me crazy when people do comparisons.
You can't compare that.
And I get it's about rights. I get it.
That's the only way you can compare it. It is a matter of your right. Right. And all of us are fighting. We think we're fighting a different battle, and we're not. We're fighting for our rights, right? Whether they're reproductive rights, whether it's the right to vote, whether it's the right to
not vaccinate or not wear a mask.
Right. Those are choices you should be allowed to make. Because you mentioned some of the vaccines we had as children. Not everybody vaccinated their kids. And you had a right to do that. If you had some sort of religious exemption or something,
you could still do that.
Right. Yeah. So that was your choice. Now the government is saying, no, if you want to go to this school, you're going to vaccinate. If you want to work for this particular country or company, you're going to vaccinate. If you want to travel abroad.
Yeah, you want to come into the United States, they made it mandatory that you have to have the vaccine before you come into the United States.
Right.
If you go to Africa, you got to get certain shots.
Right.
You do.
And you know what, too? I saw it. I said it's coming. I don't care what no one says. They're going to make it global all around that you probably got to get this vaccination to travel to other countries.
I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure that's where it looks like it's headed, because if you have to get it now to come into here and certain other countries are doing it, it's going to happen worldwide, because this is a worldwide pandemic.
Look, my parents, my grandparents had to get, I don't know what type of shot they had before they even came to the States.
Right.
They had to have certain vaccinations to come into the U.S. So this is nothing new.
Exactly.
This is being politicized.
Right.
This is the problem. This is nothing new. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of vaccinations, because I feel that because people don't know history and don't understand what transpired before maybe they were born, or they were too young to know or understand, it's gotten to a point of politicizing it all versus understanding that. And again, I don't want people to say, well, she's for vaccines or against vaccines, whatever. It's my prerogative, what I want, what I feel, right? But we have to and I know it goes back to rights, but I also say that in this particular instance, this is nothing new. It's just become so politically charged that it is all of a sudden become an issue. And this is global. This is not just the U.S.
Right.
So, a lot of people say, oh, it's just happening here. No, it's global. I have family that are overseas in Germany and Italy.
Right.
This is happening everywhere, guys. This is nothing new. And it's not that this is not something that hasn't happened previously. Spanish flu, polio, all this other diseases or what have you, that were global pandemics. So, again, and I get it goes back to rights, but it's a different type of right.
Correct.
Well, I think that
I have a right to live.
Right. I think that years ago we've had previous pandemics. we didn't have the medical technology and skills and
That we
know-how
have
that
today,
we have
right.
today.
And the funding.
Absolutely.
And even with all that we have in this country in terms of healthcare, it was still handled badly.
Yeah,
Right.
And this issue with reproductive rights is being handled badly.
it is.
Because now Texas is one of the states, or the state, that is in the forefront.
Mm-hmm.
I looked it up today. In terms of healthcare, Texas ranks 42 out of 50 states. So if you're going to tell a woman that, look, you cannot go to an approved clinic for reproductive health, where does that push that woman?
Right.
You have to leave the state,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
you have to use some other method.
Right.
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 Then you have to go to a hospital,
Mhm.
right? That may be subpar
Yep.
Mhm.
to correct the problem
The
that was
problem.
created
Right.
by trying to terminate an unwanted pregnancy.
Right.
And unfortunately, there is no exemption in Texas for rape, for incest,
Nothing.
even if the
Nothing.
woman's life is in danger.
Right.
And that's an exemption.
this
And
is
I think
exactly the
that's
problem.
actually an exemption in Medicaid. And Medicaid say they will pay, for a woman abortion if she was, I think, forcefully raped or something like that, or if her life was in danger.
Mhm.
So they have those little exclusions, that you have to, qualify for order for them to make that decision.
But they'll end
Yeah.
up changing that.
Right.
If the law
Right.
comes into place, they'll change based on the law because they're going to have to,
Absolutely.
right? They have to. They have
Absolutely.
And it's funny that you mentioned that with Texas. This is exactly why it burns me up, because of the fact that there should be exemptions. There should be minimally, if you want to even fight this, there minimally should be exemptions. And the other thing, I'm not sure if you're aware, with Planned Parenthood in Texas. So if you are, so it goes back to that heartbeat law of 6 weeks, right?
Right.
So if a woman, and I did some actually, I went back to take a look at like the statistics. Mostly women in their 20s are aborting. 92% of those that have are in their 20s. X amount are 619,000 abortions across the U.S. in 2018, things of that nature. We have over 700,000 people dead from COVID, but that's not here
Right.
there. But with that said, the heartbeat law, a lot of women who they were aborting at 9 weeks or less, because in a lot of cases women don't even know they're even pregnant.
Right.
Okay, sometimes in the first trimester, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. By the time they go to get tested,
They're almost 2 months.
they're already probably 4 or 6 weeks in.
Right.
Planned Parenthood, so now they changed it where in Planned Parenthood it used to be you go in the first time, you get an ultrasound, they tell you how long you are. The second time, the second date you're in there, you have the abortion. Now it's you go in, get an ultrasound, they tell you how long you are. If you're under 6 weeks, they'll schedule your abortion. The second visit you go for the abortion, they have to ultrasound you again, because if you show that you are over 6 weeks, because those things are not always accurate.
Right.
You could be off at least by 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay. If they show that you are over 6 weeks, they cannot do the procedure.
Right.
They have to now work with getting you out of state to actually go through the procedure. Now you're talking about how long is it going to be after the fact? Now you're probably in your second trimester by the time you're actually going to be in that position to do that. So it does. Now it's to the point where it's getting women, this whole heartbeat law with the 6 weeks. I don't care what anybody says. The minute you've conceived, yes, there's a life growing in you. You want to put a timeline on it?
Right.
I mean, really?
I kind of get the timeline thing because it's like if you're like in your third trimester.
No, I get that. No, no.
Because I know in some states they're saying, if you're a certain amount of weeks, we'll do it. If you're past those weeks, they won't do it. And I get that part. But if you're early, if you're in that first trimester stage, why not? I don't see a problem because it's still early. I understand it's a heartbeat. I do. And listen, and people try to, judge you through 30. Oh, but you're a Christian. I am a Christian, but I'm a firm believer in like a woman should have her choice. I understand sometimes you never know that if she does keep a child, maybe she can get up for a doctor, but maybe she don't want to go that route because some people don't have the heart to do that. You see what I'm saying? So it's like I can't fight you. I can't say I can't. I just can't. I have to say it's your choice. I can just educate you,
Right.
You know, tell you about your choices, and then you do it. But I can't force you. And a lot of people just want to shove and force, and I just don't.
I minimally feel there should be exemptions to this.
Right.
I minimally had they said, oh, you know what, you were raped. You found out within the first trimester.
Right.
You don't want to keep the child. Because some people who have been raped actually kept the child because they feel strongly about not, and they either put it up for adoption, the child up for adoption, whatever have you. But let that be the woman's choice.
Right.
You incest. Really? Okay. A teenager.
Yeah.
Who can't even take care of themselves, don't have a job, don't have means of financial means to take care of themselves. You're going to tell them now that they have to have this child?
Let me ask you this. Now, I read a book several years ago called The Death of the West. Pat Robertson wrote it. He was in the, I believe it was the Nixon administration. And he's been a political pundit for years. And the book focuses on the sharp reduction of what's called white people around the world. So what he was saying in his book, that unless definitive action is taken, by 2050, what's called white people will be a minority in this country.
You're a minority now, come on.
Right. And in Europe, it would be the same thing. A few years later, for Europe, what's called white people would be a minority there as well. So realistically, for these folks down in Washington, do you think they really care if some young girl in the Bronx is walking into Planned Parenthood, or some, young Latina girl, in Miami is walking into an abortion clinic and is choosing to terminate that pregnancy? Do you think that what's called, and race is a social construct, physically it doesn't exist, but do you think that there is a component of that in their decision making?
You want to keep white the majority. So what do? You stop abortions.
Right.
But what they don't realize is that if you have the economic means to do so, you're going to pay somebody off who's a doctor.
Right.
Who is skilled to do that type of procedure.
Well, it's only going to affect poor and working class people.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's going to still happen.
Right.
It's just, let's not be, I mean, we all know it's either back alley, or if they got the money, they're going to get it from, a skilled doctor to be able to perform it.
Right.
But I get it. I absolutely agree with you. It's definitely about that. It's like, we want to stop. We need to balance that. No, not balance the scale. We want to keep the scale where it was, right?
Well, if you think about it, since I guess for the last 10 years, we've had this battle at the border. We're saying there's this horde coming up from Central and South America, and they're taking jobs. I'm not sure what jobs they're taking.
The job we don't want to do.
Right. They're
Always
taking these jobs,
right?
And that they're bringing drugs. Well, we had drugs in this country long before we had these caravans coming up. And we're saying that, they're responsible for violent crime. Yet, statistically, people who are immigrants who are hiding from the police are not going to go out and commit crime.
Right. Thank you.
But that's the narrative.
That's the narrative. That's the narrative.
And when Trump was president, he said, we need more people from places like Norway. Well, who lives in Norway? Well, no.
They're Norwegian, by the way. They're not white. They're Norwegian.
Well, you have Norwegian people, blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right.
So that's who he wants to see in this country.
Yeah.
To see, and for the Republican Party, it's difficult when America's grounding. Because what happens is they're not going to gravitate toward the Republicans. The Republicans, their appeal, they're trying to expand their appeal to have more broad appeal. But for the most part, what's the base of the Republican Party? And typically, it's Caucasian men.
Over 50, like you said in the beginning.
Well, they're younger now, but it's typically Caucasian men. Those folks who watch Fox News, right? Who religiously watch Fox News are the people that are going to support Trump, right? Or folks like Trump and the Republican Party. For the Democrats, If you look at this most recent congressional class, you have people from India. You have people from the Middle East. You have women making up a large portion of the Democratic held Congress.
Right.
Yep.
You have people from Asia, right?
Very diversified.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
The Republicans can't match that.
Right.
So what do? You gerrymander. You redistrict. You just purge people from the rolls, right? That's how you're going to stay in power.
Absolutely.
And when you do that, staying in power, you have the right to implement what's going on in Texas, down in Georgia, where you have this whole fight for voting rights, down in Florida, same issue, voting rights.
Right.
And it's only going to expand across the country. These are these red states that we have these draconian laws, and there's going to be more.
But I was gonna say, it's kind of interesting. It's been going on for a long time. There's always the fight that's coming from the South. You know, there's always been that division between the North and the South. It's like, just like in some parts of Mississippi, you'd be surprised that some people don't have access to certain technology. You know, this is crazy how in the South, like they still, like I said, conforming to that 18th century, and they're just trying to keep us there. And up here up north, we're like, really? That's still going on, and it's 2021.
Well, you know something. You have to understand something. The powers that be have always wanted to keep people divided. You know, when we were talking, off air, right? Race has never been a factor throughout the world.
Right.
I guess within the last 300-400 years is when it became an issue. Prior to that, it was not uncommon to see black people or people that are considered Africans with Italians, with Spaniards, with Asians. It was not a problem. But in, I think it was 1681 in this country, the British first introduced the concept of whiteness. And why did they do it? There was a man by the name of Bacon who led a rebellion against the British. His army was composed of Native Americans, Europeans, and Africans. So the British looking at this saying, we need to find a way to divide these people. It's easier for us to win the war if we keep them fighting amongst themselves. So they introduced the idea of whiteness, which prior to that time, nobody in America identified themselves as being white. It was an idea that the British pushed, and then they created the concept of superiority. So what they did was, during that time, Caucasians and blacks married. Well, the British said, okay, now, if you marry a black person who's a slave, you are now reduced to servitude. You're back to the plantation. So it was in your best interest not to marry a black person, not to marry a Native American, because incentives that were given to Caucasians were not given to black and brown. So the idea is to keep people divided, keep us fighting amongst ourselves, keep us deflected from the real issue. Right. Keep us deflected from that. Because if you sat back and you were to just think about how bad things are in America, how much we've lost over these years, a lot of people are going to get upset, and they're going to want to take action. And the action will be to remove some of these people that have been in power for way too long.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think it's great to, walk the streets, do the marches, do all these things, be up and open and protest and so on and so forth. And I think that's great because that's like the grassroots, like we're taking. But we still have, to your point, these people in power that we have to get to our local, our federal, like we have to get to the level where we have to be engaged to focus on the people that should be running, that have truly the best interests of this country at heart, and that are really looking at it more from a diverse, we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the school systems from a country perspective, right? And So it's easy to, it's easy to kind of go down to the down the street and be in a march and rah all day long. But why is it hard for us to get to these politicians and take that same energy and look at who's running and say, oh no, I can't have that, because we're going to continue this cycle that we're have right now, and we're never going to move forward. We're never going to evolve.
And that's the problem. This system, right? It's repetitive.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
The system itself is broken. And unfortunately, the people that are running this country, we don't really choose them. They're chosen for us. I mean, like, if you think about this last election, Donald Trump, where did he come from? This guy was on The Apprentice. He was an actor.
Yes.
Right? And actually told a lot of lies. About being the biggest developer in New York. He never was. So how does he get to be a viable candidate? And Joe Biden's been in Washington since the 70s.
Yeah.
Right? In and out of power. So was that our choice? Or was that chosen for us? And we go to the polls and we choose what we perceive to be the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. We don't have the right people. We don't have good candidates out there. Let's talk presidential. I think that we're lacking right now. Who knows what's going to happen in the next election and who's going to be running? I'm sure Trump has already put his hat in, from what I'm hearing. But from a local level, from a federal, the senators, the House, et cetera, and so on, we have to, and it really starts from townships up, right? Yes. Each legislative branch, et cetera, and so on. I mean, I just think we just have to. I don't know how else we can. Oh, we got a call coming in.
Yes, we do.
Oh, that's awesome. All right.
Good evening, caller. Welcome to the show. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Let me turn it all the way down.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, this is Mama C calling in.
Hey, Mama C.
How you guys doing tonight?
We're doing good, thanks.
Hey. Okay. Can you guys hear me good?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. You know what? If I have to call in every time I hear this, I'm gonna call in. But let's face it. People of color are not the minority. We are the majority. And the people who represent those in power don't want us. They keep calling us the minority, right. But we are not the minority.
Right.
And until we understand that and recognize that if we come together and work together,
yep.
that we would be a mighty powerful people.
Absolutely.
But you see, the powers that be don't want us to recognize that we are the majority. And if we work together, we can put them all out of power. So I think we need to stop calling ourselves the minority. We are the majority. And I think we need to understand that and keep moving forward with that understanding. That's all I have to say for tonight.
Well, thank you, Mama C.
Thank you, Mama C. Thank you, Mama C.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
And she made exactly the point we've been talking about. I mean, at the end of the day, the people that are in power, the majority happen to be white, right?
I think the problem is perception.
Yeah.
I was watching the George Floyd trial. And during the trial, they showed what led up to George being killed. And they showed some footage where there was a group of people on the sidewalk and they were watching what was going on. And they're yelling at the cops. And some of them came into the street to get a better look.
Right.
Well, there had to be maybe 15, 20 people on the sidewalk. How many cops did it take to keep 20 people at bay? One. 3 guys were holding George down.
Yep.
There was 1 cop left, 2 towel, the Asian cop, and he held back 15 people because the perception is he represents the law.
Ooh, can I piggyback off of that?
Sure.
Because you said Asian, it made me pop into my head because we're talking about, the strength and how, the government control. When the Asian hate came about, did y'all see how fast that went away just like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Did y'all see how fast they passed that bill?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I'm hearing you saying, we go out there and we fight and we protest. I said, not once did they really had to go. You didn't see no Asians out there protesting. If anything, we were protesting on their behalf. And when I said that, I said, yo, that changed my perspective so much. They did not once have to fight for themselves. They made a conscious decision to pass the bill. We still been fighting for how long?
But why do you think they passed that bill so quickly?
Because they hold a lot of power themselves.
There's power.
There's power in.
Well, you got to figure when you go into Walmart, everything in it comes from China.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
The hair products come from China.
China is our biggest trading partner,
Absolutely.
right? You don't want to piss off the Chinese,
No.
and you do not want to damage that relationship.
No, absolutely.
This is a multi-billion-dollar, perhaps trillion-dollar relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if it means cutting off the nose
Exactly.
of Black and brown people to spite the face of these Asians, we're going to do it. We don't.
And that's real talk, and that's what I people shouldn't be offended by it. Because the truth is the light.
Right.
And once we understand the truth of what's going on, we can start working towards how do we get things better? How do we do things better?
Right.
And and that's why I get, people might get upset or, oh, they're talking. This is the truth. It's the light. Truly think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. Like what we're saying is factual.
Right.
Let's talk about it. Economic power. Let's talk about it.
Well, during the 1960s, the Black Panther Party was probably considered the most radical of the civil rights era groups.
Yep.
Right.
However, a lot of people didn't notice the Panthers were meeting with Caucasians
Yes.
in the Deep South,
Mm.
and they agreed with every point of the Black Panther Party agenda because they realized I'm just as poor as you are. I'm suffering just like you are. My children are going to second-rate schools just like your children are. You're in a ghetto, I'm in the Deep South.
Mm.
You're in a project, I'm in a rundown trail.
Mm.
What is the real difference between you and I?
Just as you and I was talking off the air while we was having this conversation, it was like we all have our different point of view, but why can't we respect one another? That's the biggest battle, is respecting each other's views and how to come to a common ground.
See, that's the problem. Because every time we have someone who is charismatic, who speaks well, who's articulate and eloquent of speech, when that person comes, the first thing we do is we attack him in the media, or him or her in the media, right? To discredit them, because they recognize the power in this person. If you can bring people together, people begin to realize, I'm not really much different than you. Your life is pretty much the same as mine, right? In this country, poverty knows no ethnicity.
No, it doesn't.
Right? Suffering knows no ethnicity. Here in this part of the world, we had a big problem with opiates, the opioid epidemic.
Right.
That went across all ethnic and racial, so-called racial lines, right? So when you sit people down and you have that conversation with them, it triggers something in their minds that maybe I need to abandon my way of thinking. Maybe I need to sit down and have more conversations, open conversations, because in this country, one thing we've never done, and again, race doesn't exist, but in terms of ethnicity, we've never sat down and had a real open and honest discussion. It's always been controlled. People need to speak their reality. If you're angry with Black people, you need to say it, right? You need to talk about it. You need to express it. And then we need to figure out, well, why? What caused this anger?
Right.
Was it something, is it the media showing you this, images of young Black men as being violent?
It's programming.
Exactly.
It's programming.
And once people have that conversation, they begin to realize, yeah, you know what? I did see that on Fox News. I have very little contact with, Black youth. So what is the essence of your fear?
Mm-hmm.
But ladies, we are getting close to that time,
Oh
and I
my
see the guys are preparing for the next show.
Oh, man.
So we may have to revisit this because,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, we just kind of scratched the surface.
Nah, I just got your text.
And there's so much more
Nada.
that you said unpack. We got a lot more to unpack.
Oh, yeah. There's
There's so
plenty.
many facets that,
Mhm.
you know, we haven't even talked about.
Mhm.
So we may have to come back and do another show.
What
So
about
if y'all are willing,
Yes.
okay, well, I would
Absolutely.
love to have your back.
you going?
And we can go a little deeper into this conversation,
Yep.
you know, and talk more. You know, we should probably,
Yeah, he gone. His car ain't outside.
you know what I mean, and kind of expand on it because there's so many points of view.
Mhm.
I mean, there's 3 of us here,
Mhm.
but there are so many points of view
If he was here, yeah.
get heard.
Right.
You know, they don't come on the radio,
Mhm.
right? They might go on social media and do a little bit, but to get the message out there and to be heard,
Mhm.
you know, on a large scale, it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
Maybe that's something we can look toward doing.
Yeah.
If
I
you
think
ladies
that's-
are willing to
I
come
think that's
back.
a good-
Absolutely. Because again, I think this is definitely an important topic to keep talking about.
Mhm.
Because I think the more we ignore it,
The worse it gets.
the worse it gets.
Yeah, well, for folks, I'm so glad that you joined us this evening and listened to our discussion. It would have been great if we'd had more people to call in. But as long as the information is out there, and talking to people, and people are understanding what's happening here in this country, the loss of rights, and in this case, vital rights like reproduction, you know, for men who, of course, play a very pivotal role in the reproductive process, for us to decide who is going to have a child and when, we've way overstepped our bounds. You know, that is a discussion that should take place in the family.
Mhm.
And of course, the one with the ultimate decision, the ultimate right, comes down to the woman. You know, I don't know what's happening in this country in the last, 50 years or so. We definitely shifted and we're reverting back
Mhm.
to a time that was a dark place in this country.
Mhm.
And unless we're all vigilant and we're all out there on the front lines protesting and making demands of our government, we may find ourselves fighting again for basic human rights.
Yep.
So folks, continue to support Gynesis Radio. Continue to listen. Come listen in on Sundays to hear the sistership and enjoy their show as well. So I thank you ladies again for coming on,
Thank you, Ron.
and I thank you listeners, and have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
We good, Dutch?
Okay.
All right.
This is